My name is Vincent Harrington, and I could never have predicted that my career would take such a terrifying turn. A few years ago, I was granted a prestigious position at the Sacred Brotherhood of Saint Benedict, entrusted with the task of cataloging ancient manuscripts and sacred records known to only a few. I was deeply honored to work within the hallowed halls of such a venerable institution where the very foundation of faith had been laid for centuries. But little did I know, what I would uncover there would shatter everything I believed about the world. The story begins one chilling autumn evening, when my superior, Father Richard Edmonds, asked me to prepare documents for a secretive department dedicated to studying long-forgotten rituals. This department was shrouded in secrecy, its existence known to only a select few, and I was warned that I would soon face things that had never been documented in any conventional history book. The department, I was told, focused on analyzing mystical texts and ancient religious artifacts, but I never imagined that what I would encounter would stretch beyond the natural world. I worked in a shadowy corridor, the air thick with the musty scent of old parchment, surrounded by towering stone walls and heavy oak doors that led to the sacred archives. The nights were unnervingly silent, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards or distant whispers that seemed to seep through the very walls, as if the place was alive with secrets. Despite my best efforts to remain unaffected, an overwhelming sense of dread gripped me on that particular evening. I had stayed late to finish my work on an important manuscript when Father Nicholas Owens approached me. He was a solitary figure, his piercing eyes betraying a depth of knowledge that most could not fathom. He rarely interacted with the other staff, always keeping to himself, yet on that night he seemed to have something he needed to share. We sat in a small, dimly lit room, and Father Nicholas began to tell me a story that would forever change my life. "Vincent," he began, his voice steady but laced with a warning, "you may have heard rumors of the forgotten rite of the Seraphim, performed many centuries ago. Few know of it, but ancient texts suggest that the power of this ritual still lingers within the walls of our institution." His words instantly grabbed my attention, and I couldn't help but focus on his grave expression. He spoke of strange symbols and images discovered deep within the archives, symbols that had never appeared in any known historical record. Father Nicholas explained that these markings were connected to an otherworldly force capable of manipulating the human mind and influencing sacred ceremonies. His tale sent chills down my spine, and soon I found myself sneaking through the archives, desperate to uncover anything about this elusive ritual. As the days passed, my obsession grew. One night, I stumbled upon a folder marked Rituals Confidential. Inside, I found brittle pages covered in ancient symbols and cryptic runes that seemed to shimmer in the flickering candlelight. The texts spoke of ceremonies performed by shadowy groups, rituals involving blood sacrifices, and the awakening of unimaginable powers. But it wasn't just the texts that unsettled me. I began to hear unsettling rumors whispered among the staff. High-ranking members of the Brotherhood had disappeared without a trace, and whispers of an eerie incident surrounding the head of the order began to circulate. It was said that he had been seen late one evening near a sealed chamber deep within the archives, poring over texts believed to be tied to the very ritual I had been investigating. That night, he vanished, and some claimed he had been claimed by creatures from another realm, beings whose existence defied all understanding of life and death. At first, these stories seemed far-fetched, nothing more than the ramblings of superstitious minds. But as time went on, the rumors grew louder, gnawing at the nerves of the staff, even though no one dared to speak openly about them. Father Nicholas, his voice low and filled with warning, leaned closer to me one fateful evening. "If you continue to dig into the past, Vincent, remember this. There are things hidden within these walls that are not meant for human eyes." His ominous words lingered in my mind, stirring a blend of fear and intrigue. But no matter how much I wanted to heed his warning, my insatiable thirst for knowledge pushed me forward. Over the next few days, I worked in secret, taking notes and documenting cryptic symbols I discovered in the long-forgotten pages of ancient manuscripts. Each time I was alone in the archives, an unsettling feeling crept over me, like invisible eyes were watching, following my every move. The air became colder, and the darkness seemed to grow thicker, pulsating with an unseen force, as if it were waiting for the right moment to reveal its true power. What I discovered next was far more terrifying than anything I could have imagined. Things took a horrifying turn when I stumbled upon a mysterious, unnatural glow coming from deep within the forgotten chambers beneath the sacred city of Viridian. It was coming from a door that had been sealed for centuries, a doorway whose existence had remained a mystery to all who had tried to uncover its secrets before. My heartbeat quickened as I cautiously approached, a deep sense of dread creeping over me. It felt as though something unspeakable was waiting just beyond the door. The strange symbols etched into its surface mirrored those I had seen in a rare and obscure manuscript, a book that had been the subject of hushed whispers never before revealed to the public. That moment marked the beginning of an unrelenting descent into the darkest corners of forbidden knowledge, one that would lead me down a path from which there would be no return. That night, when I finally mustered the courage to break the seal and open the door, a series of events unfolded that would not only shake the very foundations of Viridian, but would also send ripples of horror around the world. My pulse raced, torn between terror and curiosity, as I moved forward, unable to ignore the warnings Father Lucien had imparted to me. Have you ever wondered what secrets are concealed within the ancient walls of a place so revered? What if the truth behind its history was far darker than anyone dared to admit? This is the story of forbidden knowledge, hidden rituals, and spine-chilling discoveries. The moment I crossed the threshold into the hidden archives of Viridian, the air thick with the scent of dust and decay, I felt as though I had entered a realm that time had forgotten. Forgotten relics, manuscripts, statues, and ceremonial objects lay scattered amidst the gloom. An eerie silence permeated the space, broken only by the occasional sound of water dripping from the stone walls. An overwhelming sense of dread settled over me. Something was terribly wrong. I carefully approached a wall where a faded fresco caught my attention. The symbols depicted were unfamiliar, but they resembled the strange carvings etched into an imposing stone altar at the center of the room. Resting upon the altar was a book, its cover worn and tattered, the golden letters nearly indistinguishable. It read in ancient Latin, Liber Tenebris, the Book of Shadows. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached out for the book. The instant my fingers brushed its surface, an electric surge of energy coursed through me. As I opened the pages, the ancient Latin text seemed to come alive, whispering forbidden tales of dark rituals once performed in secret within Viridian. The ceremonies described were terrifying. Rituals that spoke of summoning forces from beyond, powers capable of distorting the very fabric of reality itself. One passage stood out, a chilling account of a ceremony performed during a time of fierce storms and impenetrable darkness. It warned that those who sought the truth too eagerly would be consumed by the very forces they sought to understand. As I read further, my hands began to tremble, and my mind was flooded with visions of grotesque creatures and cryptic symbols. One ritual, known as Transitus Divinitatis, described the transfer of divine power from a celestial being to a chosen representative of the Church. The most unsettling detail in the text was the mention of the Pope, referred to as the bearer of divine light, destined to serve as a bridge between the living and the supernatural realms. But that wasn't all. An account emerged that spoke of an unholy ceremony involving Pope Aurelius, where, during one of these forbidden rites, dark forces were unleashed, claiming his soul as part of their twisted agenda. Could this really be true? Was the Pope truly involved in such an ancient and sinister practice, or was this just a frightening tale designed to instill fear? The question haunted me, and for days I delved deeper into my research, compelled by an unsettling mixture of fear and fascination. Among my findings was an old letter written by a monk named Elias of Granada. In it, he recounted a chilling experience from the 11th century, during which he witnessed a shadowy figure emerging from the depths of Viridian's crypts. This figure, he claimed, was an emissary of the dark powers, sent to claim the souls of those who had ventured too close to the abyss. What I had uncovered was only the beginning. What lay beneath the surface of Viridian was far more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. His ominous words echoed in my mind, leaving me torn between fear and curiosity. But as much as I wanted to heed his warning, my thirst for knowledge overtook my apprehension. Over the following days, I worked in secret, copying notes and documenting symbols I found in the dusty pages of ancient texts. Every time I was alone in the archives, I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were watching me. The air grew colder, and the very darkness seemed to pulse with life, as though waiting for the perfect moment to reveal its true power. What I found next was far darker than I ever could have imagined. Things took a terrifying turn when I stumbled upon an eerie glow emanating from deep within the forgotten chambers beneath the holy city of Abadella. It was coming from a door that had been locked for centuries, its presence a mystery to all who had dared enter before. My pulse quickened as I hesitantly approached, an unnerving sensation creeping over me, as though something unspeakable was waiting just beyond. The strange symbols etched into the door mirrored those I had glimpsed in an obscure text, a book that had been whispered about but never seen. That moment marked the beginning of an unrelenting journey into the darkest corners of knowledge, one that would lead me down a path with no return. That night, when I finally gathered the courage to break the seal and open the door, a series of events began that would not only shake the foundations of Abadella, but also send shockwaves across the globe. My heart raced, torn between fear and curiosity, propelling me forward even as the warnings of Father Victor echoed in my mind. Have you ever wondered what secrets lie hidden within the ancient walls of a place so revered? What if the truth about its past was more horrific than anyone dared to believe? This is the story of forbidden knowledge, concealed rituals, and spine-chilling discoveries. The moment I crossed into the hidden archives of Abadella, the air thick with dust, I felt as though I had entered a world untouched by time. Forgotten relics, manuscripts, statues, and ceremonial objects lay scattered in the gloom. A chilling silence hung in the air, broken only by the distant sound of water dripping down the stone walls. An overwhelming sense of dread pressed upon me. Something was terribly wrong. I cautiously moved toward a wall where a faded fresco caught my eye. The symbols depicted were unfamiliar, yet they mirrored the strange carvings on an imposing stone altar that sat at the room's center. Resting upon the altar was a book, its cover tattered, the golden letters barely visible. It read in Latin, Liber Obscura, The Book of Darkness. My heartbeat quickened as I reached for the book. The instant my fingers brushed its surface, a strange energy surged through me, and as I cracked open the pages, the ancient Latin text seemed to come alive, whispering forbidden tales of rituals held in secret within Abadella. The ceremonies described were terrifying, rituals that spoke of summoning forces from another realm, powers capable of warping the very fabric of reality itself. One passage stood out, a chilling account of a ceremony conducted during a time of storm and darkness, warning that those who sought the truth too eagerly would be swallowed by the very dark forces they sought to understand. As I read deeper into the book, my hands trembled, and I was flooded with visions of grotesque creatures and haunting symbols. One ritual, known as Transitus Sancti, described the transfer of divine power from a celestial being to a chosen representative of the Church. The most unsettling detail was the mention of the Archbishop, referred to as the bearer of divine light, destined to bridge the divide between the living and the supernatural. But there was more. An account emerged, one that spoke of an unholy ceremony involving Archbishop Simeon, where, during one of these forbidden rites, dark forces were unleashed, claiming his soul in order to further their own twisted agenda. Could this really be true? Was the Archbishop truly involved in such a sinister and ancient practice? Or was it nothing more than a story designed to instill fear? The thought gnawed at me, and for days I continued my research in secret, driven by a disturbing blend of fascination and terror. Among my findings was an old letter written by a monk named Elias of Aragon. In it, he described a chilling encounter during the 10th century, in which he witnessed a shadowy figure emerging from the bowels of Abadella's crypts. This figure, he claimed, was an emissary of the dark powers, come to claim the souls of those who had walked too close to the abyss. With trembling hands, I pushed open the ancient door, and it groaned loudly as if protesting my intrusion. A sickly, blood-red light flooded the room, casting eerie, long shadows across the walls. In the center of it all stood a figure, Archbishop Gabriel, his body racked with pain, surrounded by swirling shadows that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. His face twisted in torment as an unnatural dark force held him captive, pulling him toward a glowing, pulsating rift that loomed ominously in the distance. The portal, as if alive, exhaled a foul, unnatural presence, like a doorway to an abyssal world that had never seen light. What had been set free in that room could not be contained. The sinister forces manipulating the Archbishop were not of this world, and as I stood frozen in place, the magnitude of the danger began to dawn on me. Could we escape in time? Or would we fall victim to the very darkness that had ensnared him? I could not tear my eyes away. One of the dark figures, its face a grotesque mask of malice, moved toward the Archbishop with deliberate, slow steps, its presence growing stronger with each passing moment. The very air around us seemed to freeze, and the once dimly lit room now glowed with the terrifying brilliance of the rift. Then, without warning, a blood-curdling scream split the heavy silence, sending chills through my spine. The Archbishop's body began to rise, floating as if suspended by an invisible force. The shadows encroached upon him, wrapping him in a suffocating grip. I could not move. The man who had been a beacon of faith and hope, a symbol for millions, was now vanishing into the dark unknown. The creatures hovered above the ground, their twisted forms radiating cold, otherworldly power. It felt as though the very laws of nature were unraveling, and before I could react, the door behind us slammed shut with an ominous, resounding thud, sealing us within the grasp of these evil forces. Suddenly, an alarm blared, cutting through the tense atmosphere, followed by the frantic voice of Cardinal Benedetti, shouting orders for evacuation. His voice trembled with desperation, but it was clear. No one could escape. Panic surged through our ranks as the shadows grew stronger, warping the hallways into a maze of terror. The walls seemed to whisper with the voices of lost souls, their mournful cries reverberating through every crack and crevice. Father Lorenzo, his sanity teetering, muttered incoherently about how resistance was futile. Our once calm, ordered world was disintegrating. We rushed to the central chamber, but it was already too late. The communications were down. The entire system was failing. Cardinal Benedetti's frantic voice echoed in the background. "We must stop this ritual!" But the words were hollow. The creatures were no longer just shadows. They were thriving on the energy of the portal, and nothing could halt their power now. The final image etched into my mind, before everything dissolved into the suffocating darkness, was of the Archbishop, the embodiment of hope. His face contorted, unrecognizable as he was consumed by the swirling light of the portal. A deafening scream followed, a wail that seemed to carry the sorrow of 1,000 lost souls. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, there was nothing. Silence. When I finally emerged from the suffocating blackness, a chilling realization gripped me. The world I had known was gone. The Archbishop, the very symbol of faith and hope, had been claimed by a force far darker and older than anything we could comprehend. This was not just the end of a man. This was the beginning of the end of an era. Reality itself seemed to tremble, unraveling before my very eyes. The darkness that had once been a distant, fearful legend had risen, and it would not rest until it consumed everything. I devoted myself to uncovering the truth behind that ritual, to unmask the dark forces that had claimed the light of our faith. If you, reader, ever find yourself in the presence of a darkness so profound that it threatens to devour your soul, remember this: once you witness it, you will never be the same. The world you once knew will never return. There are secrets in the deepest shadows so terrifying that even the strongest light can be snuffed out in an instant. If you have seen it, you know. The darkness waits for no one.